What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of High Performers. Today we have Graham joining us, which I'm super excited about. He's in the tech and startup community in Buffalo, and know he's going to have a couple great things for us to chat about today. So, Graham, thanks for hopping on with me.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
Absolutely. What's your role in the company you're at now? Give us a little rundown on that.
Sure. So I work at a company called Kickfurther. So if you're like me, you probably would have heard of Kickstarter. And then Kickfurther, the idea came out of like, what do you do after you have like your idea and you've done maybe your first production run? So Kickfurther is we fund small business. You sell inventory. So all the stuff that if you're watching this, you've got clothes on, you probably ate some food, like all of those things, someone has to produce. And so our company buys inventory for growing brands and allows them to pay it back after it sells. And my role there is essentially building out growth. So what does that look like? When I was brought on, we had a budget of a couple $1,000s. I did some paid search, and we've really grown over the last couple of years. I've been there almost 4 years. So now we do a little bit of everything. And my job there is like, how do we take the money we have and turn it into the customers we need to hit our targets for where we want to go as a company?
I love it. Super exciting. I feel like growth marketing roles didn't even exist like 5 years ago or just 5 to 7 years ago. So it's nice to see people in it. It's always been super interesting to me. And I'm so excited to hear more about, what you're doing and what you've learned being in a role like that a little bit. So I think one thing that's super interesting is that you were an early employee at Kickfurther, right? Like one of the OGs, they might say. So what was the team size like when you started versus where you're at now?
Yeah, so when I had joined Kickfurther, admittedly, I took the interview because I was at my last job and was beginning to transition out to the next. I'd never heard of the company. They had moved here from 43 North. So if you're not familiar, 43 North, startup competition, they give in the past, it was a big $1 million grand prize and a handful of like $500,000 prizes. And so we were finalists. We had the $500,000. And so one of the stipulations is you have to move at least I think it is half of your leadership team or maybe half of your team from where they are,
Yeah.
Buffalo. And so at that time, Kickfurther was a team of 6 out in Boulder, Colorado. Actually, our founders are from the East Coast, and they'd moved out there for an incubator. And so, this wasn't their first time moving to support their growth. So 3 of them moved out here, and then I was the first hire. So I was employee number 7. We were in the startup space over near the medical center here, if you're in Buffalo and familiar with that. And since then, we've grown to now, including like all of our international employees, we're pretty close to 50. So that's just about 3.5 years. I probably shouldn't math live, but we've quadrupled, quintupled. I'm not sure exactly what the multiple there is, but
Yeah.
it's a really fun ride of going from. Someone asked me the other day if I was on the executive team, and I said, when you're 7 employees, pretty much everyone is kind of on the executive team, and so it's been fun
Yep.
to watch our company grow and experience all the things of like how do you keep culture when you go from 7 people up to 50.
Yep.
It's really fun to listen to our CEO talk about. He used to be able to kind of talk to everyone before they joined the company. Now it's because that's kind of it's his baby, and so now we have an HR person and we have like full actual policies, and so it's been cool to grow up at the same time. It's funny to go from like where there was kind of no rules and just like make sure that we are growing and doing what we need to becoming like an actual company. So it's been fun to watch. Probably this, the way a parent would probably watch, their kids go through.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, it's systems and policies get really important as you grow. We're realizing that, and then realize we're growing much slower. I mean, we're still a very small team, but the first couple of years we're just like borderline reckless. A great culture, and we're trying to be as professional as well put together as you can. But you're kind of just trying things and like trying to just keep positive vibes and keep it rolling and go for growth. And then as you get going, it's like, all right, we're a little more official now. So you got to get things in place and make it a great place to work. So that's cool. Yeah, I've always just admired the kind of culture and workflow from Kickfurther from what I can see from afar. And just seems like a really cool company to be at. So I feel like you made the right choice hopping in there. Were you, was it a growth marketing role that you stepped into when you got there? Or was it a little bit different
Well,
than what you're in now?
yeah, at first it was just called director of digital marketing, and so that it really fit the background that I had. I'd gone to college for journalism first because I always loved writing, and then I went back to school for integrated marketing, mostly because I was not ready to be an adult after I graduated undergrad. more student loan debt. And so I moved into a little bit of like a marketing role because I realized I never really wanted to be a journalist. I didn't have an interest in doing like the two examples I always use are like the, midnight house fire stories or like covering high school basketball games. Like those are just things that there was value in them. It didn't align with my passion. You certainly don't want to
Yeah.
be stuck somewhere. And I think especially in, when you're producing something, if you're not passionate about it. So moving into marketing, especially like more of the creative side, has been a lot of fun for me. So when I joined, we only had a budget of, it was the first time we'd really had a budget to spend on marketing to my knowledge. And, we started slow, experimented here and there, and moved, as we had more budget and as we had more resources, of course, adding different things on. And so over time, a lot of my responsibilities have shifted, from just focusing on digital to overall things as traditional as direct mail or, helping outline some strategic partnerships or occasionally going to trade shows. So it's really been more of and what I like about smaller companies is like roll up your sleeves and kind of tackle the next thing as it comes along, even if it's not your job title or maybe, the thing that you have a ton of experience with.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny too how digital is very important, but as you mentioned, like as you get bigger, it's kind of like, all right, what else can we try? Like even if you're spending a good amount in digital, it's like time to play around and maybe you can go back to traditional methods, things like that, just to see how else you can engage customers. So one thing that, because we see a lot with clients, like kind of like what you're talking about, we see people on both sides. You have companies who are smaller, maybe just diving into their digital budget. Maybe they just have their first paid media budget and you're just trying to get like early wins versus, okay, now we have like a 6 or 7 figure marketing budget for the year. Like what are all these different channels we can execute? What's maybe like something you guys did really early on that allowed you to get some early wins? Like was it maybe some paid search, like some small Google ads or just some direct outreach type stuff? Like what kind of helped you guys get the ball rolling?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. Those are the two things that really allowed us to have like dollars in, dollars out in a predictable manner. So even before I got there, the budget was not really there for a ton of advertising. And so they did a lot of like colder outreach. And that I think, kind of took them from stage A to, I'll say, like stage B kind of to when I got there, when we had some budget for paid search. And so turning that on, not to say we didn't have like hiccups and opportunities to learn, but that would allowed us to like hone in on, what are the things, because paid search, you can do it, especially if you have a small budget, you can do it in a way where you're really capturing it's obviously in vogue now to talk about the demand. Like you can capture the out there. So for us, it was really easy to, we have an answer to a problem. People on paid search typically are trying to solve a problem. So it was really easy wins for us to begin like, putting, whether it's $1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 into paid search. Granted, we've never gone as high as 100,000.
Yeah.
Easy for us to kind of get predictable results there of like, okay, here are the things people are looking for. We can kind of begin to understand, what kind of quality and velocity those types of searches are going to come in with. And when we were able to take, whether it's $10 and turn it into 20 or, multiply that by whatever scale you're at, that allowed us to begin having at least, building out a skeleton of some predictability that allowed us to move higher up into the middle of the funnel, the top of the funnel. And not that we have like firm answers on either of those two things. We're still a growing company. We're still learning what it looks like to a larger marketing budget to look like what it is to move out of just the bottom of the funnel. And that's actually kind of the phase we're at now, is like a lot of our lead gen comes from like really pain point oriented. We don't really have a huge need for even like multi-touch. A lot of what we do is like really easy to see where they came from because it's they have a problem and we're answering it right away. And we're moving into a phase of our growth of like where we can start to plant seeds for longer term things. So like strategic partnerships where like you're not necessarily going to invest, a dollar in and know what you're going to get back out, but it's a play for the future, especially as it comes to like branding and awareness. And that's been fun for me to be a part of because as a growing like young-ish marketing professional, building out some of those things and understanding when it's not super predictable, how do you model that out? How do you kind of build a case for something that is maybe a little bit more intangible versus a paid search that's a little bit more predictable, I'll say.
Yeah, that's I'll say like just something to learn, I think, from what you just mentioned there, and something I see as like a big misconception with companies just getting started of like, okay, yeah, you got early wins, paid search maybe brought in some of those people that had the pain points, you guys can solve for. But like even now, 3-4 years down the line, there's still no like, one true, yep, this is where we get all our leads. Like it's nope, we're still testing stuff. Yep, okay, maybe paid search still brings in, 20% of traffic, or like you're kind of just a balancing act. But I think some people think, we're going to get into ads, we're going to run them for a few months, and they're going to start to see like this one answer that really brings in all the leads, and then we can scale that, and like it's just black and white, and it's completely not. So it's cool to hear that from you in real time, and recollecting on what you've gone through actually with your company. Because yeah, a lot of people I think just think it's something they can turn on, especially with paid media. But any channel, like we're going to get into it. Yep, that's going to work, and it's just not the case. Something you got to like trial and error ongoing, and yeah, continuing to kind of just like learn from it, and evolve through it. So that's super cool to hear. What else? I know. So kind of the goal here we try to accomplish in this show is at least a few actionable takeaways, which I think you've already given us some, and just some good learnings already in what you've mentioned in your experience at Kickfurther from start to where you are now. What's one of the main things that you wanted to bring out in this, that you kind of see as something people can take from here, and put into themselves, or maybe something they can put into their marketing strategy that they should focus on?
Yeah, I mean, so granted, the funny thing about marketing is it's always subjective. Right? There's always who knows what's going to work. I've turned down ideas before because I was like, there's no chance that's going to work, and then like you go and test it, and it actually does, right? And then there's the age old question of form over function. Like a lot of advertisers and marketers can get like fall really in love with like how something looks or how cool it is to us, and then like it may not resonate in the marketplace. Like I still click on links here and there where it goes to like those really long form sales messages or sales kind of copy where it kind of reminds you of like the old like Ogilvy days of like the 1940s and 50s where everything was like super long form in the newspaper and trying to sell whatever it might have been. For us, I
Mm-hmm.
would say as we kind of taking that idea and morphing into like what we've learned, one of the things that if you go and look up best practices right now for how to do a landing page or how to like put out content, it's like succinct. People don't have attention spans, and I think that while there is like value in that, and like you do have to understand that like with how fractured the media environment is, we have like I'm always distracted by whether it's phone or another thing, shiny object. It belies the fact that people will consume longer form content if it is compelling to what they're going through and it speaks to whether it's a pain point or wherever they're at in their journey, whether it's like a person or a business. And that's come out for us. We ran a little test probably going back 6-ish 7-ish months ago where we took a landing page that had kind of like represented our like hero version. It was the one that had won out in tests, and so it matched exactly what you would find if you looked up like best practices, like headline, couple bullet points, call to action. And we actually stripped it down, like almost no colors, headline, yes, but then like instead of a few bullet points, we had probably a couple hundred words, and we were telling a story about what it's like, as in our case, product entrepreneurs, some of the things that you face. And so we had a I was really eager to like get it going. Like I still am like really passionate about copywriting and good copy and how it can help you convert. And so I set it, set this version of it live, just 20% of the traffic. And then like, I'm kind of obsessively, we use Instapage for a lot of our testing, especially on like paid channels. I'm hitting refresh. Okay. So I don't see any conversions coming through. Come in the morning and we're at, if our conversion rate was like 5 or 6% before, we were 11 and 12% the next day. And I was like thrilled. I mean, of course, like, yes, at the performance, and like that's a huge jump. If it had even been a percentage change, I would have been like, this is enough of a signal that there's something here to go with. But the fact that
Yeah.
it's that much more successful, and on like we were just doing off of ads, I think, or Meta and Instagram. If we could do that there where people are, whether they're on their phone or on their commute or whatever, if that works there, we can take that type of methodology, we can apply it to our outbound. We can apply it to, we were just about to, set up our direct mail campaign that was coming up. If we could take that sort of tonality and approach and use it across those other things, it helped us understand that maybe we do lose someone who looks at it and says like, oh, there's multiple paragraphs here, I'm not sure I want to get into that. But the first person, if the person starts to read it, the first sentence, and then gets to the second sentence, I just look at it at that point of like, can I get them to the third, to the fourth? And ultimately when they get to the bottom, if they're there, they're probably that much more built in or bought into what we're doing. And that's been super fun for me to like go back and recognize that yes, we are a B2B company. yes, there is sort of like, whether it's a stigma or truth that like B2B is a little bit boring, it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so like we've taken that approach, even historically on like our social channels. Like we don't, it's not super stuffy. We do use a lot of memes. We do use a lot of GIFs. Are we maybe alienating some people? There is a potential of that, but like we're not the only solution in our marketplace, as probably anyone who's listening who owns a business. You're probably not the only one doing what you're doing either. And like for us, building out a personality is a way for us to stand out, especially like, we don't have the same type of financial power as like some of our biggest competitors. So if we can, build a niche for ourselves, we can build a reputation. It's at least one thing to help us be memorable. And like it sort of goes back to, this is, kind of reminds me of some of the struggles I have personally. Like I always want everyone to like me.
Yeah.
That doesn't always necessarily work. Because if you're something, it's like hard to, it's whatever that Katy Perry lyric is, like you got to stand for something or you fall for anything.
Yep.
You have to like, who are you? Make a statement, have a personality. That's kind of okay. Like not everyone is going to like you, but you're going to have way deeper and better relationships, whether it's with customers or interpersonally, if you are who you are and are okay with that.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like, um, I mean, man, you're dropping a bunch of gold in here, but I think you can tell, um, kind of like maybe the maturity of the brand or even the marketing team behind the brand when you get to a point that you're talking about of like, okay, yeah, we can be short and quick and sweet and tell you what we do and what problem we solve. And yeah, that's one part. And maybe that gets you interested. But then to your point of like telling a story, having a bit of a personality, it does take a little bit more. And why not try longer form copy? And I think copywriting to me and being in marketing, I think it's still the hardest skill set, honestly, and it may be the most valuable in some aspect in digital marketing because whether it's ads, social, landing page, it has to go across the whole funnel, if you want to call it, or whatever it is, the different touch points. And yeah, it's not easy, especially if you're trying to like develop a new personality for a brand. It's like, how do you do that? Who's the judge of that? Who's telling me what this personality should be? Like, you kind of just got to find yourself a little bit in maybe who your customers are or who your team is. Yeah, so Kickfurther's, I think, lucky to have you heading up the growth over there and with the marketing team because you're dropping a lot of knowledge here and a lot of stuff that I think people miss the mark on, honestly, when they're doing this sort of stuff. Not thinking of it deep enough. So it's also cool to hear that you putting that test together and seeing, okay, my conversion rate just doubled and I went with long form content because all of a sudden there's a bit more for people to get into here and relate to. And it could be the nature of your guys' business too. I mean, you're dealing with, is it mainly e-commerce brands you guys are working with or?
We do work with a good number of like omni channels, so people who, as you're growing, imagine you start a t-shirt business. Like it is probably just going to be on your own website, but then like
Yeah.
you get big enough, like everyone wants to have that viral product, and then Target says, let's, yeah, give us some, and then like maybe you have the third or fourth distribution channel, then you add an Amazon. So we do have a lot of companies that are, almost all of them have some e-commerce presence, but a lot of them, some of them are even behind the scenes. Like we have, think about the last time you went to, whether it's like, to get your hair cut or something, like there's all the products that are there. Someone has to supply all of those products. And like those are, they're typically running through a lot of inventory. So we serve people who are, names that you would know and also names that you would never know because they serve like, just small regional areas as like industrial suppliers. So it really runs the gamut across a number of like product-based businesses.
Yeah. Because you kept mentioning like, specifically for you guys, I mean, everyone's solving a problem out there, but you guys are really like, I'm guessing sometimes it's pretty urgent. Like, I really need inventory now. Like, I have orders coming. Like, guys, I need funding. Like, I am in a bind. I need a solution now. And I feel like those type of people, whether it's what you guys are doing on the funding side for inventory or something else in a B2B space, when someone has a problem, they're looking for a solution. I feel like they almost want a little more to read. They're like, please, like, tell me how you can help and how you can do this, and like, I want to know what the answer is. And then yes, I'm going to submit this form and like, please get in contact because I can tell you understand my situation. So for you guys, maybe the nature of the business and your customers, that long form content is like maybe what they're looking for. Like we want to know a little bit more about how you're gonna, answer that or solve that problem for us. So super cool to hear that, and super cool to hear how you tested it in that sense with a landing page, and actually were able to reap the benefits of that test. And I'm sure that's then since influenced other long form copy or more storytelling and personality in the brand, which everybody's aiming for. So I love that. Before we wrap up, I do absolutely love the memes at Kickfurther. I think it's great. I think LinkedIn is getting better and better with being less like, stuffy and professional, and it's much more, people are getting into fun loving content. I think the memes are great. I would love to know, how did the memes get started into the content strategy or calendar? Did you have any convincing to do with leadership that that was the route you should go, or did you guys just kind of go for it? Like, what was that like? Because I think everyone should have a meme or two in the content calendar.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, luckily we didn't have to do like the approval process. I think that that goes to like, we have great leadership who you hire people who are in theory good at something, and if you give them the capacity to do that, you find out if that's true or not. And so like luckily we've been at least successful enough that we haven't had someone say like don't do that anymore or trim down. We definitely learned something from of like, how frequently is too frequently. If you're always the joke, are you ever gonna be taken seriously? So those are things that we're still,
Yeah.
but like credit goes to like a lot of the credit goes to Kaylin on our team who, you know, I really want. I mean, she was working in another agency, and I was like, this is the type of person who can like I see where I want to go with social and content, and it included a lot of that like sort of like playfulness. And so I really wanted her on the team. And late years, probably well not years later, but a little while later, when she was like kind of looking for what the next thing was, she came across our desk as like from a recruiter, and I was like, this is like perfect because I've always admired the type of work she does, and she's clever and creative, and she's versus what I have knowledge of pop culture, which is like very little and is getting like less and less. I'm turning into more
Yeah.
time, but she still has like her finger on the pulse, so to speak. And so a lot of it is like her work. And so my job is like occasionally like say, hey, let's, maybe do this a little differently or that. But most of it is just like she's really good at it. And like, again, empowering people who are good at what they do to have capacity to take some risks. That's the only way that you learn and grow. And so I'm thrilled that we have that on our team. I can't take all the credit, but it's like definitely a part of like our marketing that I am really happy about and thrilled. And it's cool to hear that it stands out. I just don't think that B2B has to be super boring.
I agree, man. I try to preach that as much as I can with B2B. Like our goal, and you guys have crossover in this too, I guess, the industries you work with. But on our side with performance marketing, like you always hear about like the big e-commerce brands and D2C brands that are spending 6, 7 figure paid media budgets, and they're scaling. And I'm like, and they're doing fun content and UGC and memes and cool product. And it's like, okay, why can't B2B do like 10% of that? Like just take that model of what they're doing. That's obviously, what's leading the charge in digital innovation, and just try a little bit. Even if you are doing a more, quote unquote, boring B2B service, like you can still have fun with it and take a little bit of that into your own strategy and just try it. And who knows, you try it and maybe it works and sticks out. Maybe some of it flops, but like at least you went for it. And at least people can see that like you're trying to put out something that's a little entertaining or brings out a little emotion or something. Because you can always be educational and you can always be informative. But yeah, if you can do a little bit to evoke some emotion or God forbid, entertain someone in a LinkedIn post, I think it's well worth the effort. So kudos to you guys and the team. I'm glad you're able to give some shout outs to the people on your team that are doing that. And yeah, I've certainly admired what Kickfurther's doing, and it's been really cool to have you on here and hear from you firsthand. So props to you on all the work you guys are doing over there and the growth you've had. I guess that is, thankful to the director of growth himself. So I really appreciate it, man. That was some great stuff that you shared.
Totally my pleasure, man. And I think, what's important too is like, I'm not sure how much nuggets I've dropped, but the thing too is like when you hear from someone in this type of setting, it's like you get to see all the stuff that came out and of the good stuff, right? Like there's been learnings we've screwed up, personally,
Oh yeah.
all of that. And so that's why resources like this are great. Like I've really enjoyed the change that LinkedIn has sort of made over the years from being like really stuffy to kind of allowing people to have that vulnerability in reality, but also still sharing a lot of knowledge, because it's like that's how I've learned a lot, especially like I was a marketing team of one for a little while here at Kickfurther, and so there were things that we were encountering that didn't match my experience. I feel like I'm decent at my job, but like learning from other people, once I don't have to make all the mistakes they did to sort of step into like whatever I'm trying that they're talking about. So that's why it's great to be a part of stuff like this, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you. Excited to share this with everyone, and appreciate you.
Totally, man.
All right.